Welcome to the News9 Plus show on the world's first news and current affairs OTT platform, News9 Plus. It's been close to 3 weeks since the horrific October 7 terror attack on Israel. And now, the IDF has struck using tanks and infantry. This is the first such land-based assault inside the Gaza Strip. This comes even as foreign countries are trying hard to prevent a full-scale conflict, or at the very least, from the conflict spilling across borders. I'm joined today by my colleague, Aditya Kaul, Executive Editor who covers national security and foreign affairs. Aditya, tell us what you're hearing. You were at the Israeli embassy recently.
Well, yes, we were at the Israeli embassy. What is really happening is that, Israel is trying to tell the world, why it is important to eliminate Hamas.
Right.
And ever since this attack happened on the 7th of October, a lot of lives were lost, yes, and a lot of lives have been lost in Gaza as well. But pinpointed attacks on Hamas, their hideouts, their ammunition dumps, and their tunnels has been happening ever since.
Right.
And the Prime Minister of Israel has been very vocal on changing the reality of Gaza, and that means a ground invasion, a ground assault that is likely to happen. There have been a lot of senior political visits and army and defense minister visits at the border near Gaza to really boost the morale of the forces. A lot of troops, a lot of reserves have been there, and this is an unprecedented situation that has come up, in fact, in many, many decades. And what we are witnessing now is the beginning of the ground invasion. It won't be like more like a Hollywood film drama where we see a full-scale invasion and within minutes or hours together, we'll see end of the war. It will be a long war. It's only a beginning, and we'll see pinpointed strikes, a step-by-step approach by Israel. So the tanks have been used. There are videos that have come out.
Yeah.
And overnight, it's been more than 20 days now, we've seen finally the tanks actually invading inside Gaza, pinpointing Hamas targets and attacking them.
Yeah, in fact, I did this short explainer on this infrared footage that the IDF provided, just to give you an idea of what we are looking at. Just let's watch that. The Israeli Defense Forces have launched a raid into northern Gaza using tanks and infantry. This is the IDF's first publicized ground assault into Hamas-controlled Gaza. Now let's try and make sense of this video released by the IDF. This is infrared footage shot by drones, which almost certainly means that the raid was carried out at night. This infrared footage has a black hot setting, which means that the hot parts of the video, whether it's the tank engine emissions or the explosions, are all in black. But now what is more interesting is that this is the column of armored vehicles, Merkavas. They are being led by a very interesting vehicle, which is an armored bulldozer. Now this is the kind of vehicle that the IDF has been using in urban combat. It's one of the very few militaries in the world that has a dedicated fleet of these armored bulldozers. It's heavily protected. As you can see, the crew cabin is bulletproof windows. It's got slatted armor to protect the crew from snipers and RPG rounds. These usually clear obstructions in urban settings, and you're going to see a lot of these armored bulldozers being used in the kind of urban combat in Gaza that we are expected to see in the days ahead. Now, the other interesting aspect of the Merkava tanks that you saw in the IR footage are these Merkava 4 tanks with what are called cope cages. Now, these cope cages are specially modified structures on top of the Merkava, which is a very heavily protected tank, but this is what protects the tank from drones that drop munitions. Now, this is a product, this kind of an innovation came out during the Ukraine-Russia war. It is meant to protect tanks which are very vulnerable at the top of the hull and the turret from UAVs, from drones dropping munitions. Now, Hamas is known to have an array of explosive drones which they used to destroy Israeli watchtowers ahead of the October 7th attack. And these vehicles that you see with the specially protected cope cages that look a little ungainly, but they get the job done. They protect the tank from strikes from UAVs, from kamikaze drones, from munitions dropping out of the skies. They get the job done as far as the IDF is done. And this again is a very unique feature of these vehicles that you're going to be likely to be seeing in the days ahead as Israel plans to enter Gaza for a full-scale ground assault. So, interesting that they've used tanks, Aditya. It's more like a surgical strike, a shallow raid, and they seem to have knocked out some anti-tank positions, as they said, and some terrorist infrastructure. Is this the precursor for something bigger, like you were mentioning, that this is the kind of operation that you could see in the next few days?
Oh, absolutely, Sandeep. It will be bigger, it will be much bigger, but it will be a slow process. It will be, as I said, a step-by-step approach.
Right.
We've seen similar tanks being used in Russia, in the Russia-Ukraine war.
Right.
But what we'll also witness is that due to the urban landscape, there'll be a lot of difficulties, and these difficulties are because there will be a lot of booby traps that will be kept by these Hamas terrorists. Apart from that, these buildings are side by side.
Right.
It's almost like old Delhi or the old quarters of Jerusalem, where the buildings are side by side and there are lakhs of people all around. Let's remember, all of them have not evacuated.
Right.
What we should also remember is that there are UN compounds and schools under which there are rocket centers, and this means places where rockets are made.
Right.
So it would be a challenge. Apart from booby traps and these rocket centers, there'll be buildings where Hamas terrorists would be waiting in different areas to target from a height these troops that are incoming. There'll be smaller drones, not as capable as the Israeli drones, but yes, drones used by the Hamas.
Poke cages and the protection on the tanks and what we've seen.
And there'll be road blockages.
Right.
There'll be road blockages using refrigerators and whatever material is available with the Hamas right now.
Right. In fact, Ashish Sharma just interviewed Paolo Caridi, who wrote this very definitive book on Hamas, she called From Resistance to Regime. Let's listen into that interview.
I think that, of course, what they did in Israel can only change the perception of Hamas. And of course, it's a very, very foggy picture, the picture we have of Hamas, especially in the recent years. They came back to clandestinity. This is very clear. They don't want to show to us as analysts, journalists, etc., what they are, as they used to do in 2006, 2007. But of course, what the military wing did is changing the perspective, and also what the military wing is saying it's important for them. One of the goals of the terrorist attack inside Israel was linked to the prisoners exchange, because they were trying to reach an indirect agreement with Israel on the prisoners exchange in the last months, and nothing happened. So I think they were forcing the negotiations, but the result was completely the opposite.
So Ms. Caridi suggests that Hamas's military wing now calls the shot, Aditya. And what I'm reminded of is the LTT. It's a very, a scenario that's so close home. And what happened to the LTT in 2006 when the political wing, Anton Balasingham, who was the head of the political wing, passed away. And Prabhakaran was the military chief and the de facto ruler of the LTT, and he launched this military offensive against the government of Sri Lanka, and in 3 years' time the LTT was history. Do you see a similar situation playing out here with Hamas, where Paolo says that the military wing is now calling the shots there?
In Gaza, yes, maybe in the next few weeks there could be an elimination of Hamas. But Hamas cannot be eliminated so easy.
Right.
We have to realize and understand the complex nature of Hamas here. A lot of its leaders are based in Qatar. It's receiving this time support from Hamas and Hezbollah.
Right.
There's a never seen before Shia-Sunni unity that is being witnessed right now in this Israel-Hamas war. So it's going to be unprecedented. And of course, there'll be challenges for Hamas as well. Israel has a huge force and they have technological support,
Right.
everything that they will be using. And apart from that, the US military support and the US intelligence gathering capabilities as well,
Yeah.
added to Israel as well. And a lot of European countries would be supporting Israel in this endeavor at the same time.
Of course, and Aditya, let's not forget there are Palestinians now who are caught in the crossfire. While
Yes.
the Hamas leadership sits abroad, the fighters are in underground tunnels. You have the people of Palestine who are out there in the crossfire, and we have this documentary by Ghulam which actually speaks about the plight of the Palestinians who are dying in the thousands there. Let's listen into that.
India follows a two-pronged approach on the Israel-Palestine conflict. It supports the establishment of a Palestinian state that coexists peacefully with Israel. India also enjoys good diplomatic relations with Israel. Established in 1992, and since then, the two countries have developed cooperation in the field of defense, agriculture, technology, and trade.
Israel issue is not a monochromatic issue that we can think of it only in terms of a security issue or a geopolitical issue or the issue of the independence of Palestine and autonomous state. That's only one side of it. I think another very, very important, I'm not saying more important, but another very important side of it is really the plight of the displaced Palestinians from the area. And I'm saying that from a personal experience because I've dealt with the issue in the United Nations when I was there from 1988 to 91.
My people are dying, a lot of civilians and children, women, old men, mostly they are dying, you know. And we are feeling really helpless. But what I want to tell you, we the Palestinians are strong enough to face all these challenges which we have been facing from last over 75 years.
Beginning of this year, they have killed in West Bank 285 people by the Israeli soldiers and their armed settlers. And what you have mentioned has happened to the Israelis. It's always happened to the Palestinian people. This is the regime, the apartheid regime of the Israelis. In Palestine, we are facing one of the ugliest occupations in the world. The killing of both sides are condemned for us, if they are Palestinian or Israelis.
Let us talk about for the last 1.5 years. Over 250 Palestinians died, has been killed by the Israeli army. Nobody talk about it. We don't want, you know, bloodshed from both sides. We don't want civilians to be killed from both sides.
If there is no occupation, there is no Hamas, there is no war, there is nothing. As a Palestinian, we went for peace 30 years ago, and we have signed Oslo Agreement and accepted 22% of our right, historical Palestine, right? They established Israel on 78% of Palestine, and we accepted 22%. But in general, this war, the war should be condemned anywhere, right? And it won't be ended if the international community did not make a real pressure.
This will not finish, this issue will not end unless justice carried out. Justice for the Palestinian people. Justice only. That's it. Otherwise, no other words. Injustice, double standard of dealing with the things. You are dealing with the Israelis something and you are dealing with the Palestinians something. This will not help.
India has always been a strength for us, you know. India have always been giving a good support to Palestinians. Indian solidarity with the Palestinians have always been effective for us, you know.
India's support for the two-state solution is in line with United Nations resolution. While Prime Minister Narendra Modi was among the first global leaders to condemn the October 7 Hamas attack on Israel, he also spoke with Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas to convey his condolences over the loss of civilian lives in Gaza City. India has also sent humanitarian aid to Gaza.
I hope, as a friend of both sides, India could play good role to bring both sides together in negotiation to give the Palestinian a right and to establish the state of Palestine.
Again, Aditya, an LTT parallel there. The LTT fought using the Sri Lankan Tamil people as human shields. And this is exactly what we seem to be seeing here, where the Israelis are trying to strike at Hamas, but there are a lot of civilians there. It's like heavily, densely populated, as you mentioned. So how is this playing out on the ground? The fact that you have 2 million people there, 1 million have been displaced from the north, and they're moving towards the south. Is there a possibility that the Israelis, the IDF, could be creating a free fire zone in northern Israel where they could, target Hamas?
Well, that's been the idea, Sandeep. That's why appeals were sent out for people to move out. But as
there were
I said,
leaflets, they were dropped.
Everything possible. I mean, there were roof knocks, there were leaflets, there were media appeals that were sent out for days together. And there were, these appeals and requests sent to Arab countries as well, and the US, that we are going to strike. And it's important that, the civilians should vacate that area. But unfortunately, civilians have been caught in the crossfire. Apart from that, of course, Hamas is known to use human shields. They don't care about the local civilians there.
Right.
They don't even care about their own families.
Right.
And apart from that, we need to also realize that, there's been a huge UN debate that's been underway, and the world is today divided as never before. And Hamas is continuously, using these civilians, and a lot of journalists have also been, victims of this crossfire. 23 journalists, both Israeli and Palestinian, have been killed till now. You only a few hours back had this episode of Al Jazeera bureau chief in that area. His entire family dying. Horrific and sad and tragic, really. Very barbaric. But unfortunately, it's a war, and there are casualties. That's the reality of it. And a lot of civilians have not moved out, perhaps on the instructions of the Hamas. So these killings, not just killings of the Palestinians, but the killings of the troops now will also increase once there's a full-scale ground invasion.
Right, and there seems to be absolute determination on the Israeli side to teach Hamas a lesson. In fact, our correspondent Neha Khanna interviewed Israel's intelligence minister Gila Gamliel. Let's listen in.
Let me begin by asking you, ma'am, about a statement that the Israeli president, Isaac Herzog, has made. He has said Hamas terrorists who entered Israel were found carrying instructions, Al-Qaeda material on how to make chemical weapons using cyanide against the civilian population of Israel. Would you be able to confirm that for us? Can you share any details with us about that?
First of all, unfortunately, it is true. We are dealing with monsters. They are worse than ISIS. What they did, we are suffering the painful outcomes of this murderous terrorism. And like you can understand, that no country in the world will dismiss crimes against humanity in the form of deliberate murder of hundreds of innocent civilians. And Hamas, what he did, even though about the chemicals that you speak, you have in the pocket all the details how to use it against innocent citizens in Israel. We cannot understand, and it goes against any sense of human decency and against Islamic teachings. Terror strikes in this, it's become against all the citizens of Israel. They don't care if they're Arabs or Israelis, and they are using both of them a lot of missiles that are coming inside of the citizens in Israel. All these rockets that are coming and try to kill our citizen here in Israel. So what you can understand that unfortunately inside Gaza and inside Israel, both of them, the civilians are evacuating from their homes as a result of the fight against this terror. Our IDF is calls upon residents of the north of Gaza Strip to evacuate their homes and move south because we want to protect them. And inside Israel, unfortunately, too, we are adjacent to the Gaza Strip. What we need that our people in the north or in the south of Israel will leave their houses and come to hotels inside Israel. And we are at war and our goal is to destroy all the military and the governmental capabilities of Hamas once and for all, and restore the security back to the citizens of Israel. And we are ready for a continuation of a military, all the needs to win this, and we will win it, this war. We need to understand that it's so awful to see what they did. They raped women in front of their families. They burnt alive babies. They took hostages, babies, elders, women. They killed innocent citizens by burning them, by shooting them. It's not make sense. A lot of young generation in Israel that came only for a festival in their holiday, they murdered them. And when you see these monsters, it's not make any sense to understand that it's possible to do things like that. Like the president of the United States said that they are ISIS, and I can say that they are worse than them. And what we need to do, all of us, when we understand that unfortunately inside Gaza, they're using their only civilians as human shields. We have a lot of problems to deal with these monsters, but we will win because we will destroy them one and for all.
You know, I want to talk in greater detail about Israel's war against Hamas in just a moment. And you're absolutely right, ma'am. There are no words to express the horror one feels thinking about the butchery and the savagery that was committed by these Hamas terrorists against the Israeli people. I just want to confirm this point with you once again. Apart from all the brutality that we know about already, is it correct to say that they were carrying material to make chemical weapons, to target Israeli civilians with chemical weapons?
Yes, of course. Our president of Israel show all these details that they got, how exactly to use it against civilians inside Israel. Like you, I'm not surprised when you see all their all what they did to the people. They cut their head, they burned them alive, they raped them. It's not make any sense. So this chemical is part of their whole view against the civilians, innocent civilians. And now to think that they have 200 and more than 222 hostages inside Gaza in this monster's hands, we will need to do everything we can to send them free. And we need to make safe the citizen inside Israel, and this is what we are doing. The state of Israel is put as a goal to destroy the Hamas and the Islamic Jihad. That they are a terror organization, they are monsters against humanity, and we will win this war. And after that, we will need to bring the opportunity for the citizen of the Palestinian citizen to get free from this evil regime that they have today.
Well, yes, what they've done has shamed humanity. Ma'am, I hate to ask you this question, but there are some apologists for Hamas who actually have accused Israel of lying about babies being beheaded and women being raped. So I'm going to ask you, does Israel plan to share horrific evidence of those barbaric crimes with the world at some point in time?
Israel is a democratic state, like you know, and we won't become monsters like them. We have the international legitimacy for the actions against Hamas and against Hamas. This is indicated by the unprecedented international support that we got from all over. It's led by the United States President Biden, but alongside with a lot of countries that their leaders come to support Israel. We have a problem that a country under attack, it cannot continue to support its aggressors. They are using, like I said, their citizen as human shields, the Hamas. Israel is suspending the supply lines to Gaza Strip. We're following the request by the US President Biden. Water supply has been renewed to the south, the Gaza Strip, and the transfer of food, water, medicine from Egypt to the south of the Gaza Strip. And we are calling all the citizens in Gaza to go directly to the south of Gaza, that there they can got all this. Unfortunately, Hamas is using a lot of propaganda on social media platforms, including disinformation. What they are doing, like we saw about the hospital inside Gaza, that they turned their own missiles of the Islamic Jihad, and they say that it's Israel. Yeah. So, like I said, you know that the Israelis are trying now to deal with this, all this information that they try to bring the world. That is not only they are lying to the people, they don't care about the citizen inside Gaza. They're using them not only as a human shields, they're using them by even try to stop them to go to the south to get humanitarian things from themselves. So let's say like this: we will win this war. We will destroy this Hamas regime. We will destroy all, and we'll find every one of these Hamas terrorists. They won't have nothing and anywhere to go. And after that, we will need to deal with the day after the war, and let's hope that it will be soon as possible.
Ma'am, a lot of the Hamas leadership and perhaps even the masterminds of the terror attacks on Israel are actually sitting in the safety and luxury of Qatar right now. Does Israel plan to address that?
Let's say like this: Qatar, what they did with the two hostages that sent free, and we are not making any negotiation with these monsters, the Hamas, but we have a goal to send free all our hostages, and we will do it. Like I want to say about Qatar and all the other countries, when they see by their own eyes what they did against civilians, everybody needs to understand that things sometimes start in Israel, but they are coming all over the world. It's impossible to bring a treating like this against humanity, never mind wherever it's become. So now this is the time that everybody need to understand that they need to do all what they can to send free hostages and to break this terror organization out of law, and won't allow these monsters again to become in any other position that they control their citizen or to hurt anybody else.
It is believed that following the airstrikes by Israel, a ground invasion of Gaza is now inevitable. Could you tell us how soon it could happen?
We are preparing. It will take time. It will take time, a long time, because like you know, and like I said before, the Hamas using their own citizen as a human shields, and we are wherever we are doing, we're trying to, in one hand, destroy the Hamas and the Jihad Islamic terror organization and terrorists, but we are calling all the time to them, to all the citizens inside Gaza, to protect themselves and to go to the south of Gaza There they will have water, they will have food, they will have medicine, but they need to go to the south because we need to deal with this Hamas and to finish them once and for all.
Well, that was the Israeli minister, Aditya, very, very resolute about her country's resolve to destroy Hamas. How realistic is that goal, Aditya? I mean, given the fact that Hamas is so closely intertwined with the Palestinian people and their cause for a separate country, do you see it possible that Hamas could be destroyed politically, as she said, and militarily?
Militarily to an extent, politically I don't think so, because there's been a seething anger of many decades that's been inside Palestinians. They want a political solution. I'm talking about the people who believe in peace, who believe in democracy, and Hamas certainly doesn't represent that. A lot of Palestinians that you speak to, even outside Israel and Palestine, will tell you that they seek either a two-nation solution or some kind of a political workout of this barbaric, brutal, killings that have happened for the last many decades. So it won't be easy to eliminate Hamas. It won't be easy to take over Gaza and occupy it for a permanent period of time for Israel, because the people are against Israel. And as I said, there's been this bubble of anger inside them that is going to burst. And that has been seen bursting apart from Hamas and the terror attacks, the lone wolf attacks that have taken place. A lot of knife attacks day in and day out happen in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. We've also seen a lot of stone pelting, rioting that takes place in West Bank. And I think in the last 2 weeks, the kind of violence that we have witnessed even in West Bank hasn't been seen in the last decade.
Right, and interestingly, there was a report in the Washington Post which mentioned that a large number of Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad fighters were trained in Iran. And the timing of this report is interesting because I think it's an intelligence leak, and the United States wants to tell Iran that you're under our scanner. What's your take on this?
I'm not surprised. I mean, now that it's amply clear that Ayatollah Khamenei has come out and supported Hamas, even though he says that they were not involved, of course they will have that public posturing. But otherwise, we've seen Hezbollah helping them out from the northern front. They've given open call to their commanders, to their fighters to fight the Israeli forces. Of course, 44 of the Hezbollah members have been killed already in this firing and airstrikes by Israel. So it's amply clear that Iran has been behind this, has been involved in this never seen before attack. And of course, the US wants to signal to Iran not to interfere, not to be part of this war, which has been ongoing through Iran's proxies till now. And of course, sending out the strike group, the aircraft carriers, the troops near Israel, around the Mediterranean, clearly indicates that the US is serious about it. US emotionally, militarily, strategically is backing Israel in this war against Hamas. And no matter which state or a proxy comes and joins in, I think US support will be resolute completely in support of Israel.
And very interesting, Aditya, what the President Joe Biden said recently about the IMEEC. And this is exactly what we've been talking the last couple of days, the India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor. And he said that Hamas's attack was actually aimed at that. The IMEEC was the biggest takeaway from the G20 summit in New Delhi, and Prime Minister Modi also spoke about it recently. Everyone's keen on ensuring that the IMEEC is not a casualty of the conflagration in the Middle East. Joining me to talk about this is Professor Shreeram Chaulia, Dean and Professor of Public Policy at the Jindal School of International Affairs. Professor Chaulia, welcome to the News9 Plus show.
Thank you.
Tell us what you're seeing right now. What is the state of play with the countries that are, the kind of statements that are coming out? Is it Cold War 2.0 already?
Look, it's a major regional war, no doubt about it. And the number of players who are involved is tremendous. I mean, you look at the combination of forces on both sides. So definitely West Asia or the Middle East is in flames, and it doesn't look like it's going to quieten down anytime soon. So to that extent, yes, the quiet regional connectivity and diplomacy which were seen to be making progress have been halted, and I think Saudi Arabia has publicly announced that the normalization talks with Israel are off for now.
Right.
So the effort to create some kind of a moderate coalition of Arab states that will ultimately not only legitimize Israel but also create room for cross-border cooperation, trade and liberalization, all these things
in fact, that's
have come
what
to
we've
a
been
halt.
talking about a lot. And just days before this October 7 attack, the Crown Prince Abdullah said that every day we are getting closer and closer, talking about the peace deal with Israel. And now every day we seem to be getting further and further away from that last piece of that jigsaw, which is Israel-Saudi Arabia peace deal. Is there the possibility of an IMEEC corridor without peace between Saudi Arabia and Israel?
Well, geographically, if you see the IMEC, the plan, it was to connect western coast of India all the way up to the port of Haifa in Israel and then across the Mediterranean into Europe. So you are going to lose that chain if these two countries are at loggerheads. But actually, if you take a longer view, in spite of the war, I think this is there's going to be a pause with IMEC, but not a complete stop, simply because the core interests of Saudi and Israel are still aligned. It's just that Saudi, as the custodian of Makkah and Medina, for them to be seen to be hobnobbing and to be normalizing with Israel at a time when you're seeing these horrific pictures of the destruction of Gaza by Israeli bombing, it will not be palatable for Saudi Arabia's status as a so-called leader of the Islamic world. So they go to, but they're very pragmatic. Behind the scenes, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, the whole leadership, they just want to find a way to and expand business and economic linkages across the region, to move out of dependence on oil. Mohammed bin Salman has a so-called Vision 2030, which is to diversify away from petrochemicals and to move in a different direction. So all these things, and then they have other fears of the Hamas type of radicalism also taking root inside Saudi Arabia and challenging the monarchy itself. In earlier eras, they had a fear of Al-Qaeda. So they have never supported forces like Hamas because this kind of radical Sunni Islam is seen as a threat. So I think ultimately they will patch up with Israel, and ultimately IMEC will go forward. But maybe the hopes of an early launch will have to be now postponed for some time due to this.
Aditya, tell us about the statement that the Turkish president just made, Erdogan, where he's called Hamas, he's praised them and he's called them Mujahideen. You see a larger battle for the leadership of the Islamic world taking place?
Well, absolutely. They've been at loggerheads, if not confrontational very directly. They have been making these statements time and again. And Turkey initially came out with some balanced statements, condemning, any kind of violence that took place, the terror attacks as well, but gradually changing its position and making it more radical. The latest statement from Erdogan clearly indicates that Hamas is not a terrorist organization. They are so-called Mujahideen, and it's a liberation organization working for the rights of the Palestinians, clearly indicating where Turkey really stands on this. And at a time, two basic reasons which I see for the Hamas terror attack in Israel is one, the IMEC, certainly because this comes as a challenge to a lot of radical and terror organizations and of course a lot of states, including Turkey as well as Iran. And apart from that, clearly the normalization that was going to take place between Saudi and Israel, because this would have ended any possibility of Hamas really rising, in Gaza and outside Gaza, and Qatar's visibility of supporting them would have shrunken as well. So clearly, I feel that these diplomatic changes that have happened recently, of course at the G20 summit as well, were the reason behind this. Of course, people may say that the Palestinians have suffered for a very long time, and Hamas is, of course, hands in gloves with Iran. Time and again, one cannot rule out the possibility of China as well, perhaps behind the scenes helping out Hamas or Iran in this terror attack. So I think the larger game will play out in the coming weeks. But as of now, we are witnessing a ground invasion slowly and steadily heading towards Gaza.
So, Dr. Chaulia, this ground invasion, the longer it takes, you see the entire Islamic world coming on one side, like, this very shocking statement from the Turkish head of government. And then you have this, the entire Western bloc on the other side. Do you think that is going to happen? The Shia, Sunnis, all of them are going to be on one side versus the West?
I think that is ultimately Iran's objective.
Right.
They want to unify the Islamic world behind what they call resistance to the Zionist enemy, which is Israel. And but I think it's more complicated because Israel has normalized ties with a number of neighbors, and there are at least 6 Arab countries that now recognize Israel formally, and then Turkey itself has formal ties with Israel. From time to time they snap it, but then so it's not like Israel is isolated in the region, but it's just that they will need to be judicious about the use of force. I mean, generally Israel, because it has an overwhelming military superiority, it can go all out and pummel the Hamas hideouts and try and destroy it. But then the question is, at what cost? And for them, it's not just a question of humanitarian law and civilian losses of lives and property and all that, but also the image, because they will want not to be seen as an enemy of Islam. Because then, Israel is just 9 million people surrounded by, so many others in the region who are Islamic. So they will need to coexist, right? The geography is a given. The promised land is right there. And the Abrahamic faiths all have to live together. So ultimately, they have to find some way to perhaps, I think it's not going to be an all-out, reducing to rubble kind of attack, because they will need to factor in all these, apart from these hostages and the US pressure also. The Americans are not necessarily saying go ahead full steam. They are also laying some conditionalities because they are afraid about US forces in the region, in their bases, likely to be attacked by Iranian proxies, and they don't want an escalation. So I think the Americans ideally would not have wanted this at all, because their whole grand strategy was to try and move away from the Middle East and focus on Indo-Pacific and so now they're being drawn back, carrier groups,
coming back into the Middle East.
So I think Israel is under considerable constraints. It has overwhelming military advantage, but it will have to take in all these factors into account while
that's
making the call.
Something I'm afraid we have completely run out of time, gentlemen. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Chaulia, for joining us, and Aditya. News and current affairs continue on the News9 Plus show. Thank you for watching.